Maybe you have solved quadratic equations by factoring. And actually you can see a video in my YouTube of how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. But what happens when you cannot factor the quadratic equation? What we can do? Well, in this video we're going to review the technique of completing the square that it applies when you cannot factor your polynomial. Let's go with it. Imagine that, for example, you have a function. Let's say that the function is a quadratic function, obviously, x squared minus 8x minus 6, and your objective is to calculate or to determine the number of zeros or the roots or the x-intercept of this function. So if you want to find out the x-intercept of a function, what you need to do is just to set the function equals to 0. So we're going to set the function equals to 0, okay? So this means that my equation will be x squared minus 8x minus 6 equals to 0. So this is my objective. My objective now is to solve this quadratic equation. But as you can see, this quadratic equation cannot be factored because there are no numbers whose product is going to give you negative 6 and whose sum is going to give you negative 8. So as I don't have these numbers, I need to try to find out another technique. And this is when we're going to apply the completing the square form. Now, how to do the completing the square form? Or what is the main idea you need to complete the square? The main idea you need to complete the square is to remember the perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to write the perfect square trinomial here, so you can remember how to write the perfect square trinomial. We can write the perfect square trinomial when x squared plus 2zx plus c squared. When we have this trinomial, we can factor it using the form x plus c to the second power. What happens if I need the negative sign? X minus c, so I just need to put the negative in the term of the middle, the term that has the x to the first power. So this is the perfect square trinomial. So in completing the square method, what we're going to do is to observe the first two terms of my equation and try to complete the square with these two terms. This is the objective of completing the square. So now we're going to see how to do it. How to do it. First, for my help, what I'm going to do is just to solve the equation for the x part, x squared minus 8x. So it means that I'm going to add by 6 both sides of the equation. So x squared minus 8x equals 6. Now, after you get the x squared minus 8x plus 6, we need to identify what is the number I need to add here in this place to get the perfect square trinomial. How to know this term? So I'm going to observe that this number here is 8, or actually is negative 8, but we're going to focus only on the number without the sign, is 8, and this number that multiplies x should be the same as 2c. So as 8 should be the same as 2c means in this case that our c should be 4, because if I take 4 times 2, it's gonna give me 8. So it means that if c is 4, now c squared should be 4 to the second power, that is 16. So I'm going to add 16 to complete my perfect square trinomial. But remember that if you add on one side of the equality, you should add it on the other side. So now that I add both sides of the equality by 16, I can factor this trinomial using the perfect square trinomial formula. So it means that in this case, that is negative, it's going to give you x minus 4 to the second power. So x minus 4 to the second power. And this is going to be equal to 22. Now, at this point, what we just did is just to organize the information in a way that I can get the perfect square trinomial. So what it means? It means that what you're just do is to identify the perfect square trinomial, and by identify the perfect square trinomial, what you did is to complete this perfect square trinomial. This is the main idea of completing the square. This is what we did in this part. Now let's continue. Now that I complete my square and I have my perfect square trinomial, I just need to apply the square root property. So I hope that you remember the square root property, but I'm gonna rewrite it here. So the square root property. What happened with the square root property? The square root property only established that if you have x squared equals a, so this should be the same as x equals positive or negative form of the square root of a. This is the square root property. Remember that in this case we need to take into account both possible solutions, positive and negative. This is something that you need to add into your solution, because if you raise to the second power a negative number, it's gonna give you positive. So in this case, minus square root of a to the second power is going to give you x. Okay, it's gonna give you a, sorry. Now let's go. So I'm going to apply the square root property here. This is a square, so if I apply the square root property, I'm gonna get that x minus 4 is going to be either the positive or the negative square root of 22. Now that I have that x minus 4 is positive or negative square root of 22, I just need to simplify this equation for x. And to simplify this equation for x, I just need to add by 4. So 4 plus or minus a square root of 22. And now I have two solutions, one with positive, the other with negative. So x equals 4 plus square root of 22. This is solution number 1. And solution number 2 will be x equal 4 minus a square root of 22. So at this point, what we just did was to solve the equation by applying the square root property and applying perfect square trinomial. So you just need to identify, to solve this type of equations, what is the term you need to add to complete your perfect square trinomial, and you need to identify what is the term that you need to get the root of to apply the square root property. So there are three important things that we have seen here. First, completing the square using the perfect square trinomial. Second, remember to use the square root property, should be very clear for you. And the third, we did something extra, that is, if you need to find the x-intercepts of a function, in this case quadratic, get the function equals to 0. This is what we did. Now there is something pretty cool about this, that is what happens if you want to complete your square in general form. What happens if you have any quadratic equation and you want to solve it by completing the square in general? This is what we call the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is just applying completing the square in general form. And this is something we're going to see in another video. But just for you to practice and remember and tell me if you understand the method, I suggest you to find out the solution of this quadratic equation. X squared plus 10x plus 20. equals 0. So solve it, put in the comments the solution, put in the comments how you did, tell me if you have any question. Remember that learning is part of working. So now it's time for you to work, it's time for you to do the exercise, and I hope that you understand this video. I hope that you can learn about it and you can continue with your process of learning mathematics. See you in the next video, and I hope that you like it and comment your answers. Bye bye.